If you want to be successful in learning English, there are certain things you can do to make that success a reality. Hi. A lot of people have asked me, what's the best way to learn a language? Or what's the best way to learn English? And you know, that's the kind of question where if you ask 100 people in a room the same question, you're going to get 100 different answers. So what I want to do is give you my answer to that question. And my answer is actually based on some of the things that I have done when I was trying to learn languages. So I've learned, obviously I grew up speaking English, but I learned to speak Norwegian, I learned to speak German, I'm also working on Japanese and Korean. So I have some idea on things that helped me. So I want to share these tips with you, and I think you'll find that they'll be helpful in your quest for learning English. So the first tip that we've got is want to learn. So in other words, you want to ask yourself, is learning English something that I really want to do? Maybe you're only half interested in it, you're only half-hearted. So the reason why this is important is because if your heart is not into it, then frankly you're going to be looking for excuses to do something other than study English. It'll be very difficult for you to sit down and study. You'll have to drag yourself to study, and you have to drag yourself to take the class or take the tests or anything like that. So if you're only half-hearted, no hint is going to help you. No tips or no tricks or anything like that. So you have to really want it in your heart if you are going to be successful at all in learning English. If you can't honestly say, yes, I really want to learn English, then frankly, it would be better for you to just stop, put English aside for a while until you can develop that passion or that genuine interest in learning English. Next tip, tip 2, is identify your motivation. So in other words, why do you want to learn English? This is a personal question that you have to be able to answer. Every individual has his own reason for learning English. Perhaps you want a better job, perhaps you want a promotion, perhaps you want to go to school in an English-speaking country, perhaps you need a better score on TOEIC or on TOEFL, perhaps you're planning on living in an English-speaking country. All these are reasons or motivations for learning English. So what you want to do is identify your motivation, why it is that you want to learn English. And the reason why this is helpful is because when things get tough, when things get slow, when you get kind of discouraged or frustrated, then you can look back and think about, okay, I'm learning English because I want to because I want a better job, because I'm going to go to school there, or whatever the case may be. So knowing your motivation will help you over the rough patches in your study for learning English. Okay, tip number 3, set goals. Learning English is like a journey, and every journey has some destination, something that you're working towards. So in learning English, you want to have a goal, something that you're working towards. Now, I put out a video not that long ago about New Year's resolutions and making SMART goals. So if you have not already looked at that, go ahead and watch it, because it'll give you some really good concrete tips on setting goals for your learning English. And even though it says New Year's resolutions, really it's something that you can use at any time of year. But when you're working with English, you want to have some goals. What is it that you want to accomplish? What do you want to improve on? So if you have some goal, some destination in mind, that will help you plan your English study, how you can reach that goal. If you don't have a goal, it's hard to see your progress. So that's another reason why you want to have goals. You can see how much you've been improving, how much progress you've been making. And what you also want to do is review your goals from time to time. Sometimes your needs change, sometimes your situation changes, so it's a good idea to review your progress, review your goals every once in a while, and then adjust accordingly. Okay, tip number 4, practice, practice, practice. If learning English is like a journey, then you can only advance in that journey step by step by step. And how do you advance? You practice. Think about a musician or an athlete. Maybe the athlete wants to join the Olympic team, or maybe the musician wants to play for a world famous orchestra. Well, how can the musician or the athlete accomplish this? They know that it involves a lot of training, a lot of practice, and not just practice whenever they feel like it, but it has to be systematic, it has to be regular. So you want to do the same thing. Practice every day, or at least on a regular basis. Now, how can you practice? Well, with language in particular, there's 2 aspects to consider. There's input and there's output. Input would be listening to something like a movie, or listen to somebody talking, or that kind of thing. And then reading. Those are ways that you input English. And you can learn a lot that way because you're listening to native speakers or that kind of thing. You can see how they're using the language, how they're using vocabulary, and you can start to absorb some of that subconsciously even, but it still works. Now, the other aspect would be output. So you want to be able to express yourself in English through writing or through speaking. So you want to practice writing. Say, if you have a blog or if you have a journal, just practice writing every day. Get used to expressing yourself in English. And then the other aspect of that would be speaking every day. If you can talk to native English speakers or other language learners, practice your English so you get comfortable with that. Tip number 5, expose yourself to English as much as possible. Now, we kind of already covered this with practice, but it goes a little bit deeper into the idea of practice. You expose yourself to English as much as possible by listening, by being in situations where you're using English or you're surrounded by English as much as possible. The thing is, you want to develop a habit. You want to be able to get to the point where you're comfortable with English, where whether you're reading, whether you're writing, whether you're speaking, whether you're talking, you are more comfortable in using English, and it actually becomes a part of you instead of something that's not really a part of you and you struggle all the time. The more you expose yourself to English, the more that will feel natural to you. The more you expose yourself to English, you'll learn to identify what sounds right and what sounds wrong without having to memorize a bunch of grammar rules and that kind of stuff. So you expose yourself to English, it kind of builds inside of you and it starts coming out without you even thinking about it. So it becomes a habit, and the nice thing about a habit is you don't have to think about it so much. It just kind of comes naturally. Tip number 6, enlarge your vocabulary. Okay, the fact of the matter is, the more words you know, the easier English will be. You'll be able to understand more, you'll be able to speak more. So definitely learn the basics, all the first level stuff that you learn, how to count, basic vocabulary, how to get to the bus stop or whatever. But all that basic stuff just is a foundation. You want to build on that foundation. So how can you build on that foundation? How can you grow your vocabulary? Probably the number one method of doing this is reading. Read as much as possible. Have a little notebook by your book, or underline words in the book that you don't know, and look them up and make that part of your vocabulary. If you encounter words that you're reading, it's going to be something that is interesting to you instead of some random vocabulary list. So read as much as possible. And also I would highly suggest working with different kinds of word games, crossword puzzles, or that kind of thing. It's very, very helpful in expanding your vocabulary. All right, tip number 7, have fun. Yeah, you heard that right. Have fun. Enjoy yourself. Now, why would you have this kind of tip? Now, think about it. If you are enjoying yourself, if you're having fun, you're going to be more relaxed. It's not going to be so stressful. And really, if you're not stressed, then you'll be able to remember things easier. It will be easier to learn. And face it, don't you want to have fun learning English instead of having it be a chore or something like that? So look at, like I mentioned previously, there's different kinds of games that you can play to learn English, whatever it takes. But have fun learning English, and you'll see that you'll learn a lot more, and it won't be so difficult. It won't be so stressful for you. Tip number 8, cultivate friendships with native English speakers. People want to help others. People are generally happy to help others. So if you can find a native English speaker as a friend, that would be a tremendous bonus to you. If it's a friend, then it's somebody that you're going to want to spend a lot of time with. You're going to enjoy their company. So you'll find yourself in situations where you will be forced in a good way to use English, because probably the English speaker won't know your native language. So you're going to be forced to think about, okay, how can I express this in English, or how can I say this in English? So that's kind of good. It gives you practical, real life situations in using English. Another aspect of having a native English speaker as a friend is that it gives you somebody that you can ask questions about, not just vocabulary or not just grammar, but also perhaps you have a question on culture or tradition. And that's kind of important too, because a lot of times if you understand the culture, that will help you in understanding the language. So I highly recommend that you find some native English speaker to befriend, if at all possible. Tip number 9, make regular study a habit. Regular study is the key to success. You don't want to wait until the weekend and then study for 3 or 4 hours like a crazy person. It's much better to do it a little bit every day. It's like the old riddle. There's a joke about, how do you eat an elephant? Now if you think about it, an elephant is a very big animal, big, huge animal, right? And then man is so small compared to the elephant. So how can a little human being eat a big elephant? And so, of course, the answer to that riddle is you eat an elephant one bite at a time. So the concept here is that you may have some huge, seemingly impossible task, but if you break it down into small steps, then you can accomplish that. So how this applies to English is you want to work on English a little bit every day. Working just 10 or 15 minutes a day is much better than trying to work on several hours only once a week. It's a lot easier to review that way. It's a lot easier to learn that way. It'll stick in your mind better, and it won't seem like such a big task. And finally, tip number 10, acknowledge the progress you've made. Progress is made just one step at a time. the thing is, when you're looking at short term, it can be very difficult to see your progress because it's made in such very small steps. But if you look at the long term, it's a lot easier to see how far you've come. So maybe if you look, oh, I know this today and yesterday I didn't know it, it's hard to see that that's really a big deal. But if you say, well, 1 month ago I didn't know this, but now I know that, or in 6 months I've come this far in learning English. I've increased my vocabulary by this. I couldn't read this before, but now I can. So it's very, very helpful to have a long-term perspective when you're considering your progress. That way you can say, yeah, I guess I have learned a lot in the past 6 months. And that's good news, because then it gives you something to celebrate. So think about how much progress you've made in the past year or the past 6 months or whatever time frame, and then say, yay for me, I did it. I have come this far, and if I did this now, I can continue. I'm making progress towards my goal. I'm going to reach that goal sooner than I think. So those are my 10 tips for learning English. I hope that you have found them helpful. If you have, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, like, subscribe, and if you know any of your friends who are also on an English journey and would be interested in this, don't forget to share this video with them. And as always, if you do have any comments or questions, don't forget to leave them below and I'll take a look at that and then we can chat further. So I hope you like this, and I'll see you in the next video.